Hi, welcome to 4 Minutes of Film with me, Rhianna. A real mixed bag of films this week. 2 for you documentary lovers, Supermensch, The Legend of Shep, and Finding Vivian Maier. We've got the massive one, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and Pudsey the Dog, the movie. So let's start with Supermensch, The Legend of Shep. Directed by Mike Myers, this is a documentary about a man who was one of the most influential people of the 60s and 70s in the music industry. And amongst other things, he created the celebrity Shep, he's friends with the Dalai Lama, and he manages Alice Cooper.
I drove into Los Angeles, and there was a Hollywood landmark hotel. A girl called me over and said she was Janis Joplin. She introduced me to Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix said, "Are you Jewish?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You should be a manager." I said, "Great, no problem. Who should I manage?" Alice Cooper.
This is a documentary that knows how to entertain its audience. The stories come thick and fast from the very beginning, involving people from Jimi Hendrix to Cary Grant, and it's got a really impressive roster of celebrities that are contributors. But it's not all about the celebrities. It makes you laugh, it makes you cry, and it made me nostalgic for an era that I wasn't even around for. I genuinely didn't want this to end. 5 stars for Supermensch, The Legend of Shep. Next up, it's Pudsey the Dog, the movie. The star of this film is obviously Pudsey the dog from Britain's Got Talent, who, after a life in show business, goes with a new family to start a new life in the country where he has to deal with dog nappers, children falling down wells, and pink poodles.
Hey everyone, this is Pudsey Poos. Pudsey Poos.
Enough of the Pudsey Poos!
This is Flossie.
Hello.
And Fuzzy Cheeks.
Alright.
And Princess Peach Pringle.
Kill me now.
It really is as awful as it sounds. David Walliams voices Pudsey the dog in the worst case of miscasting since George Clooney in Batman. The actual acting itself is appalling as well, from the very experienced, like John Sessions, to the children in the family. Look, I know it's a kids' film, but for the very young, the plot is way too complicated and the characters are just too babyish for everybody else. So 1 star for Pudsey the dog, the movie. Were you expecting anything else? Next up is Finding Vivian Maier. This is a documentary about a young man who bought a box of negative photographs from the 1960s, which started this obsessive search to find the unknown photographer who turned out to be Vivian Maier, a nanny.
We've had more interest in this work than any other photographer.
There's one particular that I bought, which I love. The composition is slightly off to me, and I think that's why I like it.
Vivian was a very private woman.
She was so awesomely unique.
She was not an open person. She was a closed person.
Vivian was my nanny.
It does start off a little bit stilted, but I loved how thorough the story was. We find out about Vivian at the same time as the filmmaker does, who was the guy who bought the photos initially. I think at the end of the film, I realised that we had learnt way too much about certain areas of her life, while this massive twist at the end wasn't really uncovered enough, but the photographs on screen just looked so incredible, so I really enjoyed it. 4 stars for Finding Vivian Maier. Next up is Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. So it's been a fair few years since the end of the last film, and the majority of the human race have been wiped out by a simian virus. But the apes are living peacefully and free until a small group of people come looking for a power source which reignites their old feud between humans and apes.
We don't mean any harm!
They're apes, man. Do you think they understand what you're saying?
Do they look like just apes to you?
Dad. Malcolm, what are you doing? Dad. Malcolm.
It's okay.
The CGI was incredible and the story of the apes was surprisingly believable. Andy Serkis was fantastic as Caesar, the leader of the apes, who's sympathetic to humans because of his upbringing, which we saw in the last film. The biggest issue for me in this was the humans. They were just incredibly two-dimensional characters. The hero you saw just then in the clip, there's a villainous character who hates all of the apes, and I have absolutely no idea what Gary Oldman was even doing in this movie. Their stories were just vastly unimaginative. So 3 stars for Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Next week, I'll be reviewing Hercules with an interview from Dwayne Johnson, Earth to Echo, and The Purge Anarchy. So click here to subscribe and catch that then.